Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
The issue of how to counter domestic terrorism has been brought into sharp focus by Sunday's massacre of 8 Jamaicans in Cherry Tree Lane in Four Paths in Clarendon. What is domestic terrorism, and are the police equipped to counter this menace? And beyond that, will rights have to be abrogated to allow the state to be in the best position to respond? Those are the questions I hope to answer this evening here on Lead Story. Let's start the show. Good evening and welcome to Lead Story here on CVM TV. My name is George Davis. It is about 48 hours, well, approaching that point, where 8 people, including a 7-year-old boy, shut down in the streets of Cherry Tree Lane, a community in Four Paths, Clarendon, the Yorktown division in the Clarendon Municipal Corporation, and Southwest Clarendon in terms of the political constituency. They were among about 17 people shot by gunmen, marauding gunmen in the community on Sunday night. And with that incident has brought a discussion about domestic terrorism and this new threat, if you can call it new, that the security forces and the state are facing against heavily armed gangsters, turbocharged and juiced up by the proceeds of crime and their capacity to wreak havoc in an instant. Is the state equipped to counter this threat from these heavily organized criminals? I've asked 2 gentlemen who are in the know from various perspectives to discuss this issue with me. The first of them, the Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of crime, Fitz Bailey, and of course, Alexander Causwell. He's a National Security Fellow at the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI. Alex, welcome to Lead Story.
Thank you, George. Good to be with you.
DCP Bailey, good evening, sir.
Good evening, George.
All right. First up, DCP, any updates based on where you are with that investigation? I know it's very, very early, but it's the obvious question I have to ask you because people watching our broadcast now want to know if there's any development in the investigation at this time.
Well, let me put it this way. We are doing a round-the-clock investigation with regards to the unfortunate incident. We are making some progress, and I would say significant progress. And as we have promised the nation that we are going to bring closure to it, we will bring closure to it. And so we continue, the men and women are out there doing their work, looking at all the possibilities, following all the lines of inquiries. Today we had a case review and to look at what we have and where we want to go. And I am satisfied that we are making significant progress.
Yes. There was an unfortunate incident earlier today, DCP, where what appeared to be intel from the police was irresponsibly placed in the public domain. Do you imagine that that will affect the police investigations in any way?
It's really unfortunate, and we are aware of it, and we are doing our internal investigation to find out how such leak could have been made. We don't know the objective for it to have happened, but yes, it gives information that we would not want the public to be aware of. But we are still focused. We're not going to let that distract us from what we are doing.
All right. So for Jamaicans now who watched that press conference with the Prime Minister at Jamaica House on Monday and hearing him describe what happened in Cherry Tree Lane as an act of terror, and heard, of course, suggestions that we're talking about a case of terrorism, an instance of terrorism. Is this a new threat that the police are going to have to knuckle down to grapple with going forward from the criminals that are running around in this country?
Well, from where I sit, I've been around for a long while, and we have had some significant incidents, brutal act by criminals. I don't remember if you can recall that that Spanish Town Tredida Park incident, where
Gravel Heights, to be precise, December 2010.
Were murdered, and in a very brutal way. I think one of them was beheaded.
Yes.
That was a real brutal situation, and the challenge of violence has been around for a number of years, and I don't think we have addressed it the way it should be addressed. The legislative framework is very critical, and I believe that even in terms of how do we create designation, that I believe that we need legislation, whether we want to call it an organized crime or transnational organized crime act, where certain type designations can be given to a certain category of individuals and possible offenses, which will give law enforcement, the security forces, a little more, what I would call authority.
Yes.
To act in situations like these. I think in most developed countries, they do have those type of legislative framework where the government, maybe the Prime Minister, can invoke certain authority so that the security forces can act in a way that is consistent with the type of crimes or offenses that have been committed.
Hear you on that, DCP. Hold it right there. Let's take a quick break and come right back. This is Lead Story here on CVM TV.
Celine Gordon, host of Holy Road.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your boy John Mark Wigan, host on the show Holy Road. Listen, people need to know what's happening in the churches and in ministry in all of Jamaica. It's an absolute blessing. We're really excited to share this.
Tune in to CVM. See it happen.
It's the Quartz Day Rush Sale. Up to 50% off select items December 5 to 6. Shop now with no cash and make your first payment in 90 days. Get a free soundbar with the purchase of an 85-inch TCL Smart TV. Plus, a free recliner with the purchase of select Samantha or Ryan 2-piece living room sets. Enjoy 15% off a Whirlpool washer and dryer combo. Don't miss the Quartz Day Rush Sale with up to 50% off December 5 to 6. Bringing value home. Conditions apply.
Welcome back to Lead Story here on CVM TV, speaking with Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of crime, Fitz Bailey, and Alexander Coswell, National Security Fellow at the Caribbean Policy Research Institute. Alex, the DCP has said that perhaps, well, not perhaps, given the changing nature of organized crime and how that has changed over time, there is need for additional tools in that legislative toolkit that allows the police to do the kind of work to successfully counter the threat posed by those who would be purveyors of domestic terrorism. Sure. Based on your understanding of the landscape, is this a necessary thing?
Well, George, what you have to understand is that terror is a tactic. It's a tactic used by a group committed to using violence to sustain themselves as a group. Now, back in 30 years ago now, when the Colombian cartels were constantly at war with each other and at war with the state, they sometimes referred to terrorism and direct bombings on state officials to achieve their goals. And so the distinction between an organized criminal group and a terror group is sometimes more fuzzy than we'd like to give credit to. Now, the Jamaican landscape is no stranger to organized criminal groups. Now, their tactics might change based on their situation, so we have to assess why this particular group has chosen to carry out this, what you can consider a perverse act of theater, to send a message to whoever they're trying to send a message to. But the problem is still the same. The country has over 200, by last estimates, over 200 organized criminal groups who use violence to rule over their little fiefdoms that they have control of. Now, recently, we at Capri published a report on linking, not for the first time in Jamaica, but linking these organized criminal groups to the problem of urban informal communities, because these are under-governed spaces.
Yes.
Spaces in which the rule of law is not present.
Yes.
Now, the solution then is to incorporate these spaces, and which will allow for, or rather, to prevent the deniability of these organized criminal groups to thrive.
Yes.
Now, do we need special legislation to do that? I think we have in legislation in place that can do that. Depends on how you use it. The law reform legislation that provides for ZOZOs provides for ample power to incorporate these spaces. But they have been accompanied by what we call localized forms of states of emergency. And that is the most powerful tool you have in the short term. Because the truth is that, and it might be a sad truth depending how you look at it, is that the security forces, military intelligence, police intelligence, they often know who these people are. They know, they have this intelligence of that quality. They know exactly who the bad actors are. But they may not have enough evidence to prosecute them and take them to trial in a court. Localized states of emergency allows you to temporarily detain these people. And with this particular incident, it's important to do that, because it's important, as they are trying to send a message to the states and to the people of this country that they can do whatever they want.
Yes.
We need to send a message to them in the short term saying you can't get away with what you get away with.
Yeah. DCP, yeah, go ahead. I was coming to you for a response. Go ahead.
But if we, for example, in a state of a public emergency, it impacts the entire community, the entire, a parish. So we inconvenient a large population because of a few. And I'm looking at a structure where some form of provision is made in law where the police can directly focus on the groups that are problematic.
That's the difference that you want legislation to craft to allow the police to work, I'm hearing you say.
Yes. Different from, because when you do state of public emergency, the entire population, the entire community is impacted in some way, in some form. So we need, and that's why I believe that designation, where, for example, a criminal organization is designated a certain way, and once they are given certain type of designation, even doing business in the country is very problematic for them.
Yes. Yes. Judge, hold on, Alex. I'm going to give you the first response, but let's take another quick break and come right back and pick up the discussion here on Lee's Story on CVM TV.
For all joint pain, poor circulation, inflammation, and other aches and pain, rub it on, the pain is gone. Rub it twice, then you feel nice. Miracle Fire Rub is all natural, all herbal with no side effects. Order yours today, 876-808-5903 or 876-330-8272. Miracle Fire Rub is all natural, all herbal with no side effects. Get your Miracle Fire Rub. Rub it on, the pain is gone.
On this week episode of Cooking with Love.
And this your girl Florence Eluche from Haiti. And you're watching Cooking with Love.
Eluche is in the building. When you talk about Asian, hip-hop, Creole, can't get it no better than this. This young lady, bad, but Minister posts nothing about food. So we're going to put her to the test right here on Cooking with Love. Yeah, look. No.
Cooking with Love crazy.
Are
watching Cooking with Love.
When the food speeds, we dance. When the vibe nice.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you is
6:45.
We're talking about domestic terrorism here on Lead Story today in light of what happened on Sunday in Cherry Tree Lane, Four Paths, Clarendon. 8 Jamaicans, including a boy, massacred by marauding gunmen. And the conversation now is about how to equip these security forces, starting with the police, to be able to counter successfully this domestic terrorism that the organized crime groups have the capacity to wreak on the nation. The Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of crime, Fitz Bailey, is with me, along with Alexander Causwell, National Security Fellow at the Caribbean Policy Research Institute. Alex, I hope you haven't forgotten the point, but I just want DCP Bailey to do something. DCP, there are people watching us who will say, am I hearing the DCP say that the powers given to the security forces under a state of emergency aren't sufficient to allow the police to work in a targeted kind of way? What does he mean by targeted kind of way? I want to put that to you for a practical example, if you may, to bring along the understanding of those watching us and trying to get with this, the point that you're making about legislative change.
What I'm saying is that when for instance, let's give a state of emergency is imposed for an entire parish.
Yes.
Every citizen in that parish is impacted some way by the state of emergency. Your movement, all of that restriction that comes with it. I am of the view that a legislative framework should be so created that the problematic groups can be designated. A designation is given to them. It gives the police authority to take a certain approach in terms of how we treat with them, in terms of investigation, and also not only them but their praxis, because one will argue that they can do something not in their name. So anyone that is linked and associated with them. So for example, they can't get a light bill in their name, they can't take out any utility bill, they can't own a driver's license, they can't have an account at the bank. Those are some of the things that I believe in terms of that designation, and it will give police extraordinary powers when we are treating with those individuals. That's the context I'm looking at it from.
In that context, do you also desire any change to the evidence threshold when you bring these persons before a court of law?
It would actually deal with that. It will actually deal with that. So the legislation, I'm talking about a very comprehensive legislation.
Yes.
In terms of how we even elicit evidence in cases like those. So there will be also some what you call administrative process that must be followed in terms of how the type of approach that we take.
Alex, this changes the question then, because I want to ask you if what DCPs are articulating, if it is in force anywhere else, and if it can have the purpose of utility he appears to be saying.
Okay, well, I want to first of all say that I don't disagree with DCP Bailey about the utility of additional legislation. I just am pessimistic about getting some new legislation done in the short term to help us deal with the problem. But new legislation to help India craft special measures for people who are outliers in their desire, their ability, their wherewithal to do mass violence. That's fine. But I'm pessimistic about it being enacted in the short term, because these measures, or like measures when they've been enacted elsewhere, have been so subject to such abuse.
By the security forces?
By the states, by the security forces or not. You saw an incident a year or two now, where there were protests by truckers in Canada, of all places, and the government responded by suspending access to their bank accounts by labeling them, not actually labeling them terrorists, but labeling them special threats to the state. And that was a very controversial move by Canada. And that you find these kind of actions repeated elsewhere, and they're so often used to target one's political enemies. And so you can imagine that Can you imagine the fight in Parliament about the details of this legislation?
Yes. And by the rights organizations.
By the rights organizations. I'm not saying that's more legislation of the kind he's referring to is useful. I'm just pessimistic about coming to an agreement on those kind of powers in the short or medium term.
Yeah.
Maybe if it knows more than I do about the political will to do so. But
and DCP, that's where the conversation has to go, because one of the things that makes the democracy in Jamaica so healthy is that rights organizations have a historic full-throated response to instances where they feel that rights will be abrogated in the name of national security, and they rally the population to advocate, if I can put it that way, against that. So you can anticipate that a battle will come, resistance will come against what you're saying. So you have the chance, DCP, to convince those watching us that notwithstanding the pain that can come and the discomfort that can come with the measures that you are asking for, given the scale of the threat we are facing now and that we will face, these measures are necessary to protect the broader citizenry in Jamaica. I give you that opportunity now.
When you look at our murder statistics, over 80% of the murder are normally linked to criminal organization, gang, maybe it's in the high 70 now. We have been slaughtering, and I use the term, over 13, anywhere average 1,300 of our citizens each year. These citizens who are killed, they have rights too, but nobody talks about their rights. We tend to focus on the rights of the perpetrators. And I think it's time for us now to shift that to the victims. These people who continue to destroy. They destroy our nation. They destroy our economy. They prevent investment from coming into the country. They destroy the future of our children. And I'm saying that we need to identify them and isolate them, and we need to use the legislative framework to assist the process in that isolation of these individuals who continue to create mayhem, who continue to destroy our society and destroy our economy.
Yeah. Alex, in the minute and a half we have before the break, let me ask you, policy making along the lines, well, not policy making, legislation along the lines that DCP is asking for, is it something that a country like Jamaica, with the realities of the impact of crime on lives and livelihood and the economy, is it the kind of legislation that a government ought to take on seriously, I would ask you?
I'm always hesitant to when dealing with a problem. I'm a man that deals with strategy.
Yes.
And in strategy, you work within your constraints.
Yes.
To get to try to solve the problem you have.
Yes.
I'm always hesitant to jump at, well, give me more power.
Yes.
Give me more resources. Give me that to solve the problem.
Yes.
We have a lot of room now, legislative room.
Yes.
And resources allocated to security forces to put a huge dent in the problem if we're smart about it. So I don't think we should just initially jump to more expansive legislation. We can do a lot with what we have now. The law reform legislation gives us a lot of power to really go a long way to solving the problem. And we need to make the most of that in the short term. And then if we do make the most of that and that's not enough, then we can take another step in the future. But I think we can do a lot more with what we have now.
Hear you on that. Let's take another break here. I'm giving you the right of response after this break, DCP. Just hold the line for us.
Love.
And this your girl Florence Eluche from Haiti, and you're watching Cooking with Love.
Eluche is in the building. When you talk about Asian, hip-hop, Creole, can't get it no better than this. This young lady bad, but Minister posts nothing about food. So we're gonna put her to the test right here on Cooking with Love. Yeah,
Welcome back. We're approaching the finish. DCP Bailey, just before the break, Alexander Causwell from Capri made the point that, look, as far as he analyzes things and based on strategy, he sees enough tools in that legislative kit to allow the police to do an even better job than being done right now to break the back of domestic terrorists. And you sound as if you're differing.
Whilst I appreciate the amendment and the new legislation that we have, which assists the process, one of the things that we are mindful of, that we still live in a country where the infamous death culture is still active and alive. And I am of the view that even as I make reference to designation, it's not a willy-nilly, free-for-all type of legislation. It's very tight, where, for example, the law enforcement, if a group ought to be designated, we have to provide tangible evidence and intelligence before maybe a panel, maybe judges, to say we are requesting that these people be designated. So it's not just the police just issue something to say that this group is ABC, but there's a process that must be followed.
Yes.
And so once that designation is given, then the police can operate more freely in terms of how do we gather evidence against this group. It may not consistent with the standard approach that is used for other general investigation. And that's the type of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And as we approach the end here of this conversation, DCP Bailey, is this something, all that you've articulated so far today, is this something that the police are merely wishing for, or is it something that you are writing and asking your minister to provide you with?
So, it is something that I've thought about, I have reflected on, and I think the discussion will continue regarding it.
Hear you on that. Alex, it's my time now to give my